afternoon and welcome to Football League World TV. We've got another EFL Transfer Zone show for you. We are now only a handful of days away from Monday's January transfer deadline day. So plenty of news and rumours and gossip to get through on the final EFL Transfer Zone show of the week. My name is Sam Rourke, Chief Editor of footballleagueworld.co.uk. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, George Dagless and Ned Holmes. George, how you getting on, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Sam. Looking forward to the weekend, I must say. How are you?
Yeah, very well, mate, very well. Ned, how you getting on?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. I think we were saying in this sort of earlier meeting that we're expecting it. It's just got the feeling that it's going to be a frenzied final few days of the window. So excited for that.
Yeah, we could have packed this show with 10, 15, 20 different transfer lines, but we've only got 20 minutes or so. So we picked out 6 of the best to chat on in today's show. We are broadcasting live on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. So make sure to send in your comments. What do you make of some of the transfer news we're talking about on today's show? We will get it up during the show and discuss it. Well, let's get straight into it. Okay, let's start off with a done deal. Birmingham City have completed the signing of Lyle Taylor on loan from Nottingham Forest until the end of the season. Taylor's chances of first-team football under Steve Cooper have dwindled ever since the arrival of Keenan Davis on loan from Aston Villa. Taylor scored 3 goals for Forest in the league this season, but he goes and joins Lee Bowyer's Birmingham, who are in need of some inspiration as they struggle in recent weeks in the second tier. George, I'll come to you first. What do you make of this signing from a Birmingham perspective?
I think potentially a good one. Birmingham obviously need a little bit more spark going forwards. They need to get themselves up the league table. I think that's fair to say. And Lee Bowyer's using his contact book again. Obviously, we've seen him do that already at Birmingham. Chukwuemeka went there. Obviously, that didn't work out too well. So they'll be hoping that this deal involving Lyle Taylor goes a bit better, but there's no reason, I don't think, why it shouldn't work out. I think for me, I would argue that Taylor perhaps enjoyed the best spell of his career under Bowyer when he was at Charlton. Obviously took them, up to the Championship from League One via the playoffs, scored a lot of goals that season, and in the Championship as well, got over 10 goals as Charlton tried to avoid the drop. Yes, they obviously eventually went down, and the way Taylor left the Valley wasn't particularly good. From a Charlton perspective, but I think, Bowyer does seem to get the best out of Lyle Taylor. He was obviously very keen to keep him at Charlton when they were there, and I think they have a good working relationship, and I think Lyle Taylor just needs that, really. He wants to go somewhere where he's, loved by the manager, loved by the fans, and, if he can score a few goals, then Birmingham fans are going to be right on side of him. So I think, looking at it initially, it's one that could work out for the Blues.
Yeah, the Blues do have a number of options in attacking areas right now. Scott Hogan, Lukas Jutkovic, Troy Deeney. He's actually out injured at the moment. But they have 3 pretty solid strikers at Championship level, you do feel. Ned, is Lyle Taylor someone you feel can kind of go straight into that Birmingham City starting 11 up front?
I'm not sure if straight away he's going to be heading straight in there. You've got to think he's looked a little bit out of sorts with Forest. Obviously, haven't been that many opportunities, so I'd expected to see him sort of drip fed in at first, if you will. I think it's a good signing for sort of all the reasons Dag said. Really, I mean, if it could be sort of a real positive one in terms of the move back sort of to under Bowyer, rejuvenates his career and rejuvenates sort of a Birmingham team that look pretty lost at the moment. But equally, I think Birmingham fans will want to see more. I think they'll want to see a bit more dynamism added. There's talks of a move for Dembele from Peterborough, and I think it's important that this isn't the last deal that Birmingham do for me.
Yeah, it seems to be quite a mixed reaction when you looked at the Birmingham fans on social media. Certain fans happy with this particular deal and some not. So just finally then on Lyle Taylor, George, what do you make of this from a Nottingham Forest perspective? Do you think it was the right decision to let Taylor leave on loan?
I think so, yeah. Judging by a lot of the Forest fan reaction, seemed fairly content with this one. There wasn't too many that disappointed, I don't think. Ultimately, he wasn't really in Steve Cooper's plans. And I think it makes sense for him to move on. Forest are obviously going in a different direction in terms of their attacking style, away from Lyle Taylor, and it's obviously paying off. I mean, look how well they've climbed the table since Cooper's come in. So I think this is a deal from a Forest perspective that, you know, it makes sense really at this stage.
Yeah, and I think ultimately for Lyle Taylor, he just wants to be playing football. You know, he is kind of reaching the latter end of his career, so a move to St Andrews could facilitate that. Let us know in the comments what you make of Lyle Taylor's switch to Birmingham City. Do you think it's a good move for the player? We've had another done deal this afternoon. West Bromwich Albion have completed the signing of Andy Carroll on a free transfer. Carroll spent the January first few months of this campaign with Reading, scoring 2 goals for Veljko Panovic's side. Really impressed in the blue and white hoops of Reading, but he's arrived at West Bromwich Albion. Obviously, the Baggies in a bit of a tough situation right now, coming off the back of a disappointing 2-0 defeat to Preston in the week. And of course, the news that star striker Daryl Linehan will be out for up to 8 weeks. George, what do you make of this one from a Baggies perspective?
I'm intrigued by it, to be honest. I think Andy Carroll, unfortunately, does always come with the proviso that he'll be good if he's fit. I think at Reading, he showed at times that, you know, he's still got plenty to offer. I mean, you say obviously he scored a couple of goals. He scored a couple of goals that got ruled out for offside, which were absolutely unbelievable. So there's never been any doubt in Andy Carroll's talent. It's always been the fitness. So obviously he'll need to, you know, continue to prove that over the coming months for West Brom. I'm not sure how much I buy into him being a direct replacement for Daryl Linehan. I think he's obviously a big, powerful presence up top like DK, but I wouldn't say he's as dynamic as he's not going to run the channels as much as DK. But I guess he offers, you know, something a little bit different for West Brom to what they've got. And ultimately, he still has got, you know, quality when he is on the pitch, that he can still make a difference at crucial moments. I guess a few West Brom fans, you know, judging by the reaction this afternoon, have looked at that goal scoring record that he's got, you know, longer term, not just at Reading. Hasn't been totally prolific, but I think if he can get a run of games and get into a rhythm, there's no reason why he can't have you know, a good impact to the Hawthorns, particularly on a short-term basis. I quite like the idea that he's getting these short-term deals. He has to keep sort of proving himself, and I think that's going to keep him determined to show what he can do. So could potentially work out. I can understand why some fans are feeling maybe the jury's out a little bit on it, but overall, I think potentially, given the sort of the terms of the deal, it's one worth going for. I think it's a gamble worth taking for West Brom.
Yeah, certainly a low risk signing. You feel certainly if he stays fit. Carroll was only on £1,000 a week at Reading, so I can't imagine that wage is increased too much at West Brom. So it does sound like, in terms of a financial deal, quite an astute one potentially. Ned, how do you think Andy Carroll will fit into Valérien Ismaël's style of play? Because we know he likes to get the ball forward as quickly as possible, and often can be quite direct in terms of the style of play. I think you mentioned on a show on Football League TV the other day about Darnell Furlong and his ability to throw the ball a long way. Do you expect that to kind of work to West Brom's advantage, having someone like Carroll in there?
Right. Well, I think it's an interesting one. I mean, if West Brom can sort of rediscover, I mean, when they were in the ascendancy sort of a few months ago in games, that there'd be long periods where they'd sort of be on the front foot and like pumping balls into the opposition box, and if they can get into that sort of position again, then obviously a player like Carroll, who is so dominant in the air, is going to be a real threat. But as George says, he's not going to offer the dynamism and the sort of running the channels that DK would, and obviously they're going to have to find a way to sort of make up for that with the players that work alongside him. I mean, I think Carroll's been treated as a bit of a joke figure in English football in sort of recent years, and I think perhaps a lot of the Albion fans frustrated, which I can understand, are sort of looking at that. But I think it's, you know, he was fantastic for Reading. It's clearly not about the money for him. There's a hunger still there to play football, and as a short-term fix, I do think it could work. Whether that's just, you know, you do wonder whether, given how many games are coming over the next few months, he surely can't be playing, you know, starting every game. So it could be a sense of, you know, bringing him in for particular games when they feel like they're going to be in the ascendancy. But I think there's almost something that's a silver lining of that he's not that perfect sort of replacement for DK. Is that once DK is back, he will still be a useful asset, because he's going to be a different option, a more powerful aerially option to throw on late in games. So I think that's sort of a small silver lining, if you will. But I think he won't be able to be plugged in the way that DK seems sort of perfectly fit for the attack. But I could see it working.
Yeah, I must admit, if I was an opposition defender and you had the thought of Daryl DK and Andy Carroll coming up against you, you'd be in for a tough afternoon for sure. Baggies fans, get yourself in the comments. What do you make of the addition of Andy Carroll? Do you think he can fire the goals to potentially secure a return to the Premier League? Right, let's look at some more EFL transfer news next. Newcastle, Aston Villa and Leeds United are all eyeing Blackburn Rovers centre-back Daryl Linehan. Linehan's become a real key cog in Tony Mowbray's side as they look to launch a genuine push for automatic promotion. Linehan's often been involved in a back three alongside Jan-Paul van Heck and Scott Wharton, really standing out. I was doing some research actually on Daryl Linehan prior to this show, and he's actually got the most through passes in the Championship out of any player. That, the likes of John Swift and Jed Wallace are second and third, but Daryl Linehan's top of that particular list, which just shows how productive he can be initiating attacks from the back. George, I'll come to you first. In that particular report, it suggested that he would be keen to sign a new deal at Rovers if they do get promoted. What do you make of his situation then at Blackburn? It sounds to me like he's a player that Tony Mowbray simply will not want to get rid of anytime soon.
Yeah, naturally Blackburn are going to want to keep him, but I guess the ball's kind of in his court at the moment, given his contract, and I think he probably looks at it. He's playing brilliantly, like you say with the through balls. He's a defender that lots of clubs would like to have, and I think he thinks at 27, potentially at the end of this year, it's kind of not like the last chance he's going to get to play in the Premier League, but it could be the best chance he gets to play in the Premier League. Either he's going to go up via promotion with Rovers, or he's got an opportunity to move to. Well, Newcastle might come down, but Aston Villa look like they're probably going to stay up. Leeds United probably should stay up as well. So there's I guess a feeling with him that he thinks at the end of this season, I want to get myself in the Premier League next year based on what I've done, and not just this season. He's been a top performer for Blackburn for a long time, a real reliable presence for him. You know what you're getting with him, and I just think he's a player that the time seems right for him to move to the Premier League for next season, and I think he'd be a welcome asset in a lot of those clubs that we've mentioned in the top flight.
Yeah, I think you know what you're going to get with Daryl Linehan. His work ethic's top notch as well, but he's very comfortable on the ball and is strong in the tackle as well. Ned, I mean, do you think he's a little bit underrated, Daryl Linehan? Because I think it's only until recently people have started to kind of sit up and take note of just how good he actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think perhaps he's a casualty of the sort of common thought that Tony Mowbray's side are always going to be sort of structurally really solid and strong defensively, and perhaps his qualities have been sort of brushed aside as just part of that sort of system, and perhaps in a Blackburn side that you'd say ahead of this season has not really been particularly looked on as very glamorous in the EFL, but now he's getting the plaudits because he's part of that side that are really pushing up in the top two. And obviously, at first there was a lot of focus on Brereton Diaz, but I think the likes of Linehan and players like Joe Rothwell have started to get their own credit as well, and it's fully deserved. So yeah, I certainly think he's someone that has been overlooked in terms of Championship defenders in the past, but people are certainly taking note now.
Yeah, absolutely. Blackburn fans, what have you made of Daryl Linehan's season so far at Rovers? Do you expect to keep hold of him past this summer? Please do let us know. Newcastle, Villa and Leeds among a host of Premier League clubs looking at the 27-year-old in this January transfer window. Right, we've got a few more stories coming up for you next. Swansea City are in talks with Watford about a potential deal for Domingos Quina. Quina's been on loan at Marco Silva's Fulham this season, but has only made 2 league appearances for the side. George, I'll come to you first. Again, a lot's being talked about Jamie Patterson's situation at Swansea City. His future remains unclear. Do you think someone like Quina could potentially fill that void left by Patterson if he does go?
It's a tough one, I would say, because Patterson's up to sort of falling out of the team for obvious reasons. Was having a great season, so to try and replace that output is going to be, a tall order for any player, let alone a player in Quina that simply just hasn't had the game time. So you don't really know what you're going to get with him, I would say, moving to Swansea. Having said that, I would say a lot of players would struggle to get into that Fulham side. I don't think you can hammer him too much. He's still a young player that's still learning, and ultimately that Fulham team has got so much quality. There's a lot of players that would struggle, and a lot of players at Fulham that are struggling that are very good footballers, but they're not getting into that team. So I think, again, maybe the jury will be out on this one. I think it's probably worth Swansea taking a punt on him. It's not going to cost them the world. He's a tricky player. He obviously has talent. He's been on the books the likes of West Ham. There's a player that has got ability there. He just needs someone to harness it, and maybe Russell Martin thinks that he can be the person to do that. And if he can, then there's no reason why he can't be a hit at Swansea. And suddenly it looks like a real masterstroke of a signing. I just can understand why there would be some reservations over it. But I guess where Swansea are, I don't think they're necessarily too in danger of getting relegated this year. I can't really see them making a playoff push either, to be honest. So it's worth them taking a risk, isn't it? See what happens. And maybe, if he does well there for however long, maybe they can look at trying to get, something longer term sorted for him. So why not give a roll of the dice, I'd say, with this one.
Yeah, I must admit, with Domingos Quina, he's not really had a consistent amount of game time on a consistent basis. It's very much been flashes of quality. And then he's been ousted from the team or injured. It's just never seemed to have had a consistent run of things at any club he's been at so far. Ned, Quina can operate as a central midfielder or out on the left. Do you think that element of versatility will be, a benefit for Swansea if he does arrive?
Yeah, you'd have to think so in this season more than other. As we've all said many times, squad depth is so important at the moment. That's obviously got to be something in Russell Martin's side. I think this move sort of reminds me of James Garner last season in the sense of he wasn't getting in the Watford team, but you almost can't hold that against him given the other players of quality there. It didn't work for him there. He went back to United, off to Nottingham Forest, and absolutely thrived. And I think, Quina, there's no reason he couldn't do the same. I think he offers you a sort of energy as well as a real sort of technical quality on the ball, which should make him, you'd feel, a player that could really flourish in Russell Martin's system. And after sort of 6 months, with a lack of opportunities, you've got to think he's going to be hungry, and the Swans will hope they can capitalise on that.
Yeah, I think George makes a really good point there. The fact that Swansea, where they are in the table, they've got that kind of capability to take a little bit of a punt on Quina, who's clearly got ability and talent, but perhaps just hasn't been given the game time. And that is a good opportunity for him to get some game time in a team that's could make the playoffs if they really made a fist of it in the second half of the campaign. But realistically, the chances of relegation are pretty slim, you'd feel. Swansea City fans, get yourself in the comments. What do you make of the potential addition of Quina before Monday's deadline? Do you think it'd be a shrewd addition for Russell Martin and his side? Right, we've got 2 more stories coming up for you next. The future of Peterborough United attacker Siriki Dembele continues to be up for debate. Birmingham City are the latest club to reportedly make a move for the player. They're set to launch a £1.5 million bid for the young attacker. AFC Bournemouth have already had 2 bids rejected. Barry Fry being very open about them particular negotiations, nowhere near the value that Posh feel he's at. George, Dembele is a player we've spoken about a lot on both Football League World, the website, and Football League World TV. A very tricky operator, arguably one of Posh's most prized assets. Do you expect him to leave in this window?
I think it's quite possible. It seems as though Peterborough have kind of set their price now. I'm just looking at sort of the latest sort of reports about it. It sounds like he himself isn't too interested in moving to Birmingham, but a 1.5 million bid was around where Peterborough are looking. So, I mean, that kind of shows you how much Peterborough are looking for. Bournemouth should be able to stump that kind of cash up. So, in the next few days of the window, surely you'd expect the Cherries to maybe go back in and make that kind of offer. You're not asking for a ridiculous amount of money. I think that's pretty fair. I know he's not got long left in his contract at Peterborough, but given the player that he is and could still become, I think it's certainly worth looking at. I think in the next few days there's definitely going to be more interest. I guess Peterborough will. The stance has always been, let's keep him and let his contract run down, and if we have to let him go for free when the time comes, then we will. And if we can get money before then, it's on our terms, then we will. And it looks like they're going to stick with that. But I think they've kind of set their stall out now with, accepting the offer Birmingham were going to make. But obviously Dembele doesn't fancy it. But now Bournemouth kind of get an idea of what they need to offer, and we'll see if they're willing to do so before Monday, or any other club for that matter.
Yeah, Dembele was left out of Posh's squad for their last league game. Just from a Birmingham City perspective, then, Ned, I personally feel that the Blues need a bit of a live wire in that team to really kind of spark some attacking nous. I think Tahith Chong got that injury a few months ago. He had such a blistering start to the season for Birmingham City in terms of his attacking output. I think ever since he's got injured, they've never really looked the same sort of team. I remember that game they won 5-0 at Luton Town. Tahith Chong was really impressive. Dembele's got them qualities about him, hasn't he? He's able to kind of create goal-scoring opportunities. He's able to score himself. He's got pace. He's got dynamism. He's got real trickery. Do you think he'd be a good addition then for the Blues?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. For sort of exactly the reason you say that, we talked about the addition of Lyle Taylor, and they do have good striking options, but I think you're completely right. What they're lacking is a little bit of dynamism sort of between the midfield and the forward line. Riley McGree obviously recalled and then signed by Middlesbrough. Tahith Chong, it sounds like he could be back sort of soonish, but I think if they can get him for 1.5 million, for me, that represents some great business. It fills a need, first of all. But secondly, this is a player that I think we, over the last few years, has been linked with some big clubs. Celtic and Rangers seem to be constantly sides interested. And he's a goal scorer and a creator. And then that man that can sort of link up the midfield and the forward line well. And as you say, perhaps it's not a forward line that it's exactly electric, while there is sort of quality inside the boxes. You do wonder outside the boxes which of them is really going to do too much. Dembele could be the answer there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quite an exciting one personally from a Birmingham perspective. I feel this is Blues fans. Get yourself in the comments. What do you make of the potential addition of Siriki Dembele before Monday's deadline? Get yourself in the comments. Right, one more story for you next. Portuguese side Vitoria are eyeing a deal to sign Nottingham Forest centre-back Tobias Figueiredo. He's found it hard to break into that team at the City Ground this season, especially since the arrival of Steve Cook from AFC Bournemouth in the January transfer window. We've often seen a back three of Joe Worrell, Scott McKenna and Steve Cook. So Figueiredo's chances of first-team football are pretty limited. A potential move back to his homeland of Portugal, Vitoria, is in the offing. George, do you expect Figueiredo to be moved on in this window? Because it doesn't look like he's going to get many chances in that Reds team at the moment, does it?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be the sensible thing for him. Head back to a part of the world that he's obviously familiar with. So obviously Steve Cook coming in has knocked him down the pecking order, but Steve Cooper's arrival hasn't really done much in terms of favours for him in terms of game time either. You look at the minutes he's played under Chris Hughton, he was starting a fair amount, and as time's gone on, he's become more of a substitute coming on for Forest since Cooper's gone in there, and gradually he's just come out of the team, and obviously Cook's in there now and he's just further down the pecking order. So I think the writing's on the wall really for Figueiredo. It's a shame for him, I guess, because at times for Forest he looked like a pretty decent player. I think that's fair to say. But sometimes, a new manager comes in and just doesn't fancy a player. We spoke about Lyle Taylor at the top of the show. I think it's the same kind of case there, really, where Cooper's come in, looked at the squad and decided which players he likes and which players he doesn't. And I think it would be wise for Figueiredo now to try and move on elsewhere.
Yeah, I think a big kind of telling point in Figueiredo's future was the fact that Ryan Yates, a naturally essential midfielder, has been dropped back into the centre-back position on numerous occasions over the last few weeks. That kind of does suggest that Figueiredo does not feature in Steve Cooper's first team plans. Ned, what do you make of Figueiredo's situation? Do you expect him to depart?
Yeah, I think it looks pretty likely now. It from the looks of things, it seems like Forest have sort of used the sort of first 2/3 of the window to really bring the players they wanted in. And now it looks as though Dane Murphy and co are sort of trimming the squad and making the adjustments. It looked, Xande Silva, it looked like that they were looking to shift out Figueiredo, getting his wages, which I think reportedly 7,600 a week. It's not huge, but are useful to get off, particularly given he's out of contract in the summer. And it looks like we might have seen the last of him. There is a risk to it. At the same time, we talked about how important depth is, and though obviously Ryan Yates was fancied in the back three, and we're expecting Joe Worrell to return from injury, you never know. Does seem like we've probably seen the last of him in a Forest shirt now, and I know that sometimes he could be unpopular. He certainly had a mistake in him, but I think it's 113 appearances over 2 or 3 seasons maybe with the club. A good servant and someone that deserves, I think, credit as he leaves Forest.
Yeah, absolutely. Reds fans, get yourself in the comments. What do you make of the potential departure of Tobias Figueiredo in this window? Right, well, that concludes the EFL Transfer Zone show here on Football League World TV. George, Ned, thanks for joining me this afternoon. We've got a show immediately after this show. We've got the EFL Weekend Preview. Alfie Burns will be hosting that one alongside Billy Mully. They're going to be taking a look through a selection of the best EFL fixtures this weekend. Just heads up for Monday. It is, of course, January transfer deadline day. We are going to be having 5 different EFL Transfer Zone shows during the day. We'll be starting off our coverage from 12 o'clock. Every single 2 hours, we're going to have a new show providing you with all the latest EFL transfer news and updates. So make sure to stay across all of our channels on deadline day on Monday. But for myself, George, and Ned, we shall see you soon.